Okay, thank you all so much, and we are back now, and we have Heather and Tanisha with us, and they're going to talk about some social or some technology platforms that we can use and kind of work in tandem with our social media as well, so kind of build off of that last session. And so Heather, I'll give you your introduction.
Thank you.
Heather is the Assistant Director for Communications and Operations at Career Services Center at UD, overseeing web development, content management systems, digital resources, and social media and marketing strategies. And Heather is also a licensed professional counselor in mental health in the state of Delaware, which she talked briefly about a little bit earlier. Holds a bachelor's in neuroscience, a master's in community counseling, and is currently pursuing her doctorate in educational leadership. So she's also a grad student like us, which is awesome. And she has a diverse counseling and business development background, so consisting of providing resources in such areas as drug and alcohol treatment, adolescent, children and family services, higher education, as well as crisis intervention. So definitely a lot of overlap between some of the areas that we are also all studying and very interested in as well. And then we also have Tanisha George, and she is also a grad student as well, and she's an MBA candidate and the grad assistant for the Lerner Career Services Center. And she's offering career development support to the Lerner grad and undergrad students. And Tanisha is a skilled marketer with more than a decade of experience in marketing management, product marketing, luxury branding, product development, and strategic consulting. And she has a Bachelor of Science in Advertising and Marketing Communications from FIT and is currently pursuing her MBA with a focus in strategic leadership. And Tanisha's diverse background has allowed her to work for notable companies such as Booker, P&G, L'Oreal, Limited Brands, and Giovanni. I think I messed that one up, even though I tried really hard. And in her current role as the president and principal consultant of Trilogy One, Tanisha and her team provide personalized marketing strategies to help business achieve growth wisely. So as you can see, both Heather and Tanisha are extremely knowledgeable in all the areas we are about to talk about. So we're very excited to have you both with us. So thank you so much for coming. And we are going to get back and share our PowerPoint.
Awesome. Well, we just want to thank you all for tuning in to listen to us. We really appreciate that. We have a lot to cover and not a lot of time. So there are going to be things throughout the presentation that we will touch on briefly. And we hope that that will spark your interest enough to do some of your own research and look into things. And we welcome your questions as well. But I just wanted to put that out there just so you realize, because we're going to cover a lot in a short amount of time.
Exactly. And just to kick things off, people are spending about 28 hours wasting it without properly collaborating. And that's the whole thing we want to get into, is why is collaboration so important? So if you are having internal meetings or drafting emails, or all of those things are making leaders and managers and just workers in general 15 to 20% less productive. So if they know that 96% of people are able to see an influx of effectiveness just from integrating some collaborative technologies, that's the whole key of why we're introducing these tools and techniques that are available to you. So we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah. You can keep with that's just the description. I like to add some context when I present, just in case. So you can keep going to the next slide. So this is just an outline real quickly of what we're going to be covering, because we decided as we looked at all the collaboration technology that there are a lot of different technologies you can use. There are a lot of different platforms, and they serve different functions in collaboration. So we're going to take a minute to look at internal collaboration and project management versus just having collaborative presence versus external collaboration. And then we're going to just talk about some best practices and how you choose technology. So we're going to start off by talking about internal collaboration and project management. So we're going to start off by talking about Slack. And so if you want to just... so this is Slack's definition of what they are. It's where work flows, where people you need, the information you share, and the tools you use come together to get things done. And you may have seen they actually advertise on TV now. They're trying to really expand their platform. And what it is, you can advance to the next slide for me. It is this platform where you can chat and share things, and it's very much like a lot of your social media platforms, except that you have channels. And so this is a picture of our UD Career Services channel, and we actually use this in our office on a daily basis. One of the big goals that we had with this is we were trying to cut down on our email communication, because we get hundreds of emails a day. I can tell you right now, my email inbox is at 500, and that's a victory. That's a victory that it's at 500. We get so many emails a day about so many different things. And so in an effort to work better with each other and not have so much back and forth in email, we turned to Slack, and we created this channel for ourselves. And what you'll see in here is that there are different ways you can use Slack. There's the direct messaging, where I can actually pull up my colleagues who are part of this channel and send them direct messages. There are also different threads. So threads are just different topics. So we have one for each of our teams. We have a counseling and programming team, so they have their own thread where we post things that are pertinent to those teams. We have one for the employer relations team. We have one that is kudos, which is when something great happens in the office, we post a congratulations message or something we're excited about in there. We also have a random channel just for, fun things that happen around the office. Who knows, any given day. The other thing that was really great about each of these channels is you can share articles or you can share documents. One of the things that we do is we create promotional materials for each of our events and for the students. And so we can upload the document into Slack, and all the parties that need to provide feedback for it can see it in one place and provide feedback, rather than sending an email or to this person and that person and getting a bunch of emails back trying to figure out, okay, who said what and which version of this are they talking about. It is all in one place. Another thing that I really like about it is on each of the threads, if you look on the side, there are highlights, but there's also pinned items. So I just shared a document with our staff of a form that I needed them to fill it out. And rather than having it get lost you'll see that's an activity feed, basically, like you would have on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can pin it, and that document is there at the top of your chat, no matter where you are in the chat. So that's a really nice feature as well. So that allows people to be able to go back and find things that you posted that they might need at a later date. So there's a lot of cool things about that. One of the things about Slack, though, is, so this is the Career Services Center channel. There are other channels, and you have to either be invited to or create them. So this is just for our office. But I also belong to a Slack channel that is for the Handshake platform that we use, and where users go and post questions and different things like that. So there are lots of different channels out there. So you want to make sure that you're, that you know which channel you're on when you're posting things. The other cool thing about Slack, if you want to go to the next slide, is the integration with what they call apps. So you can actually download different apps into Slack, and they will do different things within Slack. So, we have our Google Drive connected to Slack, and that allows us to directly link documents from our Google Drive into Slack. And then also one of the other platforms we're going to talk about in a minute is Trello. So and I'll show you how that works, but that also is integrated with Slack. So we kind of use Slack for like the big picture, as like the big overarching piece of technology that is organizing our projects across our office.
So now we're going to jump right into Asana. So while Slack is really a messaging tool that helps to bring all of your communications together, Asana is really a task and project management tool that really allows you to organize, coordinate, and really track the progress of your projects that you're going to be working on. So if you ever find yourself working in a cross-functional role where you potentially have to work with different departments, or even within your team, it gives you an opportunity to really bring everything into one central hub. So similar to Slack, it really does integrate with a lot of other platforms, which I'll dive into later, but it helps to reduce the number of emails. And we all know that, collaborating through email is really an ineffective way to work. So utilizing a tool such as Asana allows you to really bring it into one place. You can even actually turn your emails that you receive into a task that is going to be associated with a project. So that's something, again, that's really helpful to really streamline those communications. So the other element that is really helpful while using Asana within a team is a level of accountability. So if as a manager, you have an opportunity to delegate tasks and not just have a vague sort of an idea of where your team is, you can visually see the progress and track where everyone is. So that really helps. So it's not, floating in the ether of, yeah, we're almost done with this project. You can really see the percentage to completion where you are there. And then again, goal tracking. So not just, okay, where are you with this task, but seeing the overall picture and how the efforts are communicating and collaborating allows for everyone to really strive towards that bigger goal. So you can jump into the next slide. Great. As you can see here, like I said, visually, you're going to be able to see where everyone is in terms of the project timelines or the amount of completion. But I wanted to just give you an idea of some general use cases. So if you are working in the technology field, or you're releasing an app, or where you're releasing a product or something of that nature, you can really start from the launch date and work backwards and create this timeline of tasks that need to be completed and having a deadline to do that, so you can actually see it and it makes sense, where you can really see where you are in that path and in the journey. Taking another use for Asana would be event planning. So there are so many different things that go into making an event successful. This is another tool that you would be able to utilize to roll all of those tasks in to make sure that you're successfully able to, you know, let that event go off without a hitch. One thing that I actually used Asana for with my teams and leading them was sort of the reoccurring things. So if you have a monthly status meeting or a monthly team meeting, creating those agendas, you can then have, you know, those rolling tasks that you're constantly doing. You can use Asana to utilize that to make it a part of that agenda creation, where your team members can put in their topics, and now you have this holistic agenda where it's not just you as a manager coming with topics, you're actually coming with things that are going to be pertinent and relevant to your entire team. And then if any of you are ever in the role of creating editorial content, you can have that content calendar, again, utilizing Asana to help, you know, really get that rolling, and so you can see everything visually is really helpful as well. So
I was just going to say too, this could be really helpful for us as students trying to collaborate on papers, to be able to assign like the discussion section or limitations, that type of thing, in the different parts, and really figuring out what needs to be done and kind of mapping that out early on, I think could be really helpful, especially, you know, trying to publish and things like that.
Exactly, because it allows you to really see what needs to happen to get to your end goal. And one of the things that I want to bring to light is, you know, where Slack is really a direct messaging sort of a platform, Asana gives you the commentary aspect. So if there's a task and Heather and I are working on it, you know, I may not necessarily be able to chat her directly. There are apps that you can plug in to do that, but I can comment on the task and she can see, okay, this is what I need help with, or just raising a hand and saying I'm done with this and passing the baton. So that becomes really helpful too. Next slide. So like I spoke about in terms of the integration aspect, that's one of the things that we felt was really helpful in the teams that I've worked with using Asana, is that it plugs into everything. So whether it's Dropbox or actually Slack or Trello or any of the other sort of applications we're going to touch upon a little bit later, it seamlessly does that. And so there's more than 100 different applications that you could utilize to really pull all of your communications and collaborations into one central place. Take it away.
We have a question from the audience, the virtual audience. The first one was, could we use some of these tools such as Slack or Asana to strengthen our graduate student communities within departments? And then another question was, are these apps free?
Absolutely. So you can far and wide utilize any of these tools to really help strengthen the communities that we have right here as graduate students, because using this tool now is only going to help you be more successful utilizing it when you're actually in the workplace. So having that familiarity with getting used to it and really making that part of your DNA and being a successful leader is going to be helpful. And like we mentioned, the use case, like with Heather, whether it's, with Heather and Kathleen, whether it's a project that you're completing or a paper that you're working on, if you're working within a group, everyone has different tasks that they're going to be responsible for. So that really allows you to streamline that communication. And with Asana, there is a portion that can be utilized for free. So that's something that's helpful too. And some of, you can get a basic account, and you know, it's one of the user tips that we kind of put in some of the platforms that we're talking about, that you may not get everything, but just in the bare minimum, you're going to be able to get what you need for free.
Yeah, and the question was about the costs of the platforms, and that's true for just about every platform we show you today is going to have a free version and then a paid version, because, you know, they have to make money somehow. But so many of them, you get so much with the free version. I actually don't think I have a paid account for any of them because I haven't needed it. That's probably bad for their business.
No,
but it's true in a lot of ways.
You have to think about, when you do get into larger organizations, you have a big say in what technology you do adopt and you utilize within your team. So if you start using it free and you're comfortable with it, it only makes that leap easier to say, hey, it's tried, it's true, it's tested. I'm willing to put, you know, X amount of dollars behind this platform because I know that, you know, it actually works. So great question. And thank you for that.
So as we move on to Trello, so Trello is actually very similar to Asana in this idea that it allows you to take a project and divide it into lists and tasks and assign those to the different members of your team. So again, Trello, it can be integrated into Slack. And I actually think that if you're going to be using Trello, that's a really great way to use it, because it's where Slack is kind of like your overarching direct messaging platform. Trello allows you to track your projects, or something like Asana allows you to track your projects. So if you want to go to the next slide real quick, I'll share. So it all starts with, you give your team a set of creative boards, right? So you create a board for whatever project it is you might be working on. And then from there, you can go to the next slide. You can break it down into lists and tasks, and there's all kinds of things. Oh, I can see that sorry about the formatting. It didn't translate as I thought.
Oh, yeah.
But basically there are all kinds of things you can do. You can name your lists whatever you want. One of my favorite things to do is create your list as like to do, in progress, and completed, because then you can track the progress of your tasks. And then even within each list, you can create your own checklist, which I love, because I love having a checklist. Now I'm a bit of a traditionalist in that I love having a handwritten checklist because I love seeing it crossed off. But Trello actually does some of that for you, and they cross it off, and it's great. So it fulfills some of that for me. There's also some fun things in there. You can add stickers, and you can look at the activity log and see what's happening. So you can, again, it's a process for tracking what's happening with each project. And you can assign it to different people. You can give it a due date, so you can really follow up with your team members if something's not where it's supposed to be. You can label things so that you can track them in different ways, or you can also give them different colors, which I think is pretty fun to color code things. If you look at my Outlook calendar, it's all different colors because I just think it's just visually appealing, and it makes it easier to identify things. And it's the same thing with Trello. You can assign it a color, and you can know that all colors go to whatever team or whatever board, or maybe all the pink things are mine and all of the green things are Tanisha's. So you can track things in a lot of different ways. You can also filter things. So when you're looking at this and you have this massive to-do list and you're like, how do I find what I need? You can actually filter for it and search for it. But again, it's very similar in the project tracking and how it tracks your projects and how it moves things forward in teams as Asana.
And I was just going to add to that too. We used Trello this past year with our lab. And so we had 5 undergrad students, me and a professor, and we used it and were able to assign tasks right to students, and they got emails and they could upload the documents and comment. And I just think it was really helpful. So for people who aren't sure of what to use, like personally, that was a really great way to get our team rolling and to really be able to collaborate well. So just as someone who's used it, if you guys are interested in trying, I would definitely suggest it.
All right. So that was kind of our take on the internal collaboration and project management, and but we also wanted to touch on kind of having collaborative presence and how do you put yourself out there? How do you share your research? So this was something that actually came out as attached to what we talked about in the previous session. So if you want to flip over this. So I won't spend a ton of time on this because we did talk about personal branding in the last session, but these things also apply when you're trying to draw in people to collaborate with you, right? You want people to know about your brand. You want them to know who you are so that they say, hey, I know Heather, I know Jill, they might be a cool person to do this project with, or their research is very similar to mine. Maybe they're someone that I want to collaborate with, right? Mm-hmm. So making sure that you have this nice blend of professional and personal on your social media can be a really effective way to do that. And also, especially LinkedIn, having your LinkedIn really tailored to what you're interested in and what you're researching can be a really great way to do that. And then I have this fun little flow chart on, how to know where to post things. I just thought that was fun. It reminded me of those like Cosmo quizzes where you're like, are you crushing on this boy? Yes, no. And then what do you do? So I just wanted to put that out there, and I touched on that briefly. But again, taking the points from the earlier branding talk they're just really important that you're branding yourself in the way that you want to be known, because that's what people are going to want to talk to you about and collaborate with you about. I also wanted to touch on blogging because that's something that we didn't talk a lot about in the branding aspect, but I think could be really, really useful to you as graduate students. And I think it's really useful to you as you are building a presence for yourself. Blogs are fantastic because it's a way for you to create original content. And so this is a picture of the blog that we have at Career Services. This is the one we have created for students and to build our brand across campus. We ask students to share their stories about their internships and about their experiences, and because we think that, you know, peers want to hear from peers, you know, and that's kind of the brand that we're putting out there through our blog. But a lot of blogging sites are free to start. WordPress is one of the best ones, so that's why I put that one up there. And it's a really great place for you to put out your thoughts and your ideas, and share about the research that you're doing, or share about what you're learning in your classes, share about what you're passionate about, because people have short attention spans. They're not going to see that on your resume necessarily, but if you link to your blog and they pull up something that visually looks nice and expands on who you are and what you're interested in, it's a whole lot of context for what you're doing. And it allows people to know more about you and what you're about. And then also just kind of the collaborative aspect of that, you can have teams on WordPress. So we actually have a team of students and staff that contribute to the blog. So maybe you want to get together with some of your classmates or some of your colleagues and start a blog about whatever it is that your lab is studying, or whatever kind of research you guys are doing. So blogging doesn't have to be a solo project. And so we actually have lots of people that are authors and contributors to our blog, and WordPress is a really nice way of allowing you to set permissions and let multiple people contribute to your blog as well.
Is blogging on WordPress free?
Yes, there is a like premium account. Like if you want certain backgrounds or certain templates, you have to pay for those. But just your kind of basic account is free. And then I'm only going to touch briefly on this, but you could also, there are sites such as ResearchGate and academia.edu that you can put your research out there, and you could share what you're researching. So again, this idea of sharing so that people know who you are and what you're doing and can collaborate with you or reach out to you. That's the great thing about social media and these sites, is that actually we can become, well, I shouldn't say that we can be lazy about networking, because I don't think you should ever be lazy about networking, but we have all these platform nets now that will draw people in, where you can attract attention from people that you didn't know were out there. And then also there are a bunch of e-portfolio platforms as well, like Behance and Choroplot, that I just wanted you guys to be aware of. So maybe right now you're in grad school and you're doing research, but maybe, you know, a couple years from now, you're not going to be doing research. Maybe you're going to actually be out there you know, teaching or being an administrator, and so your interest might be a little different, and something like Behance is a little more artsy, or Choroplot is a different kind of way to put your work out there. So I just wanted to put those out there in case, you know, down the road you're not necessarily doing research, but you wanted to showcase the great work that you're doing.
Awesome. So I think we're going to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
We were talking primarily about collaboration internally, but at some point you're going to have to take that to the external world, whether you're dealing with clients or you're collaborating in partnerships. We want to talk about some tools and techniques and platforms that you can also utilize to collaborate externally. Starting with Google Hangouts. So the great thing about Google Hangouts is that most people, 99% of people, are actually going to be familiar with this sort of platform, because whether they've used it personally with their own Gmail accounts or their business is actually hosted using a Google app to provide their email services. So they're used to using the Google apps, the Google Drives, Google Docs, etc. So it's already there. So because it integrates with everything, it really facilitates that simple collaboration. So using Google Hangouts to make a phone call or having a video conference is great because it's free. And it allows you to do that, especially if you're doing it within the US and Canada. So users don't actually need to have Google accounts, which makes it even better that you can reach out and collaborate instead of meeting or have a video conference, even if they're not using that platform. So it gives you that ability to do the screen sharing, have the video conferencing, and phone calls, etc. But there are limitations, again, if there is a free element to it. If you're looking to communicate with larger audiences, you're not going to be able to do that with Google Hangouts because there's a minimum of 10 users. You don't have screen sharing, so if I wanted to give someone else control over my screen so that we could kind of share and do that, unfortunately, you're not going to have that ability, and there have been some quality issues. So, you kind of get what you pay for sometimes, but for all intents and purposes, if you're working with a smaller team, it really is a fantastic tool to be able to utilize. And then Skype. So again, one of those very familiar platforms that people are able to use. So it's great because you can do voice and video calling, and it also allows you to call mobile and landline phones too, and they provide that at an affordable rate. But just bringing to mind that it's great if you're working within smaller groups, but if you cross that bridge or you have more than 25 people, this is not going to be, even at its paid version, it's not going to be the best platform for you to be able to really utilize there. So. And then I also wanted to talk about Zoom. It's actually something that I utilize a lot with my clients in terms of setting up video and web conferencing. It really goes back to, getting over that hurdle, limitations in number of people. It really gets over the hurdle quality in terms of having HD video and high quality audio. It's really fantastic for that. It's great for screen sharing. On the free version, you're able to have, I think unlimited one-on-ones. And then if you're having a group call, it's up to 40 minutes. One of the things that I really enjoy, if you find yourself doing interviews that you need to have transcripts, this allows you to auto-generate those transcripts, which can be really helpful if you're in a research phase or if you're doing market research, what have you. You need to have that. It's there and it's free. So it's one of the things that I really love about Zoom.
Zoom also allows you to you can break participants up into smaller groups. So I know in one of my courses they used it here at the university, and the professor wanted us to have like small group chats, and so within the large, we'd all join in for the larger class, and then she'd break us into smaller like video conferencing groups, which I think is a really cool feature, because not every platform can allow you to sort the participants that way.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we're actually using Zoom, so it's good to know a little bit more about what we're using
No,
as
that's
well.
great.
So it's good. Thank you.
And then finally, if you ever find yourself hosting a webinar, which, as if you're an educator or you're going to be doing business at some point, it really is a great way to disseminate information and to educate. So there's lots of platforms that you can use, like GoToWebinar, WebEx. You can actually even use Facebook Live or YouTube Live, even Zoom, like we just mentioned. But the whole point of it is to really understand your audience and what is going to be your intent. So some of these are actually a little bit more user-friendly than others. So really understanding your learning curve and your audience's learning curve is going to be important. And then your budget, because not all of them are free. And if you find yourself really having a large platform where you're going to have a lot of people in your audience, you're going to need to make sure that you have the bandwidth to support that. So, and then tracking, all of this is going to be done for a reason. You want to know how well it was, how many people attended, did they stay for the full content? Is there playback and editing ability? Do you have the possibility of hosting on demand if you can't do it live? And then a free trial. So at this point in day and age, if there is a platform that is telling you to just buy it without a free trial, I say run for the hills, because there's so many great platforms that are out there that will let you try it without actually having to open your wallet. So that's just a few things to keep in mind when you're looking for webinar technologies.
And it looks like we actually did have a question about someone wanting to know how do you actually get that auto-generated transcript, and talking about how that could be really good for qualitative research. So maybe that's something, if you know off the top of your head, or we could always follow up later with something.
It gives you that option in the settings. So when you're going and doing it, it's there.
Okay.
So,
Awesome. So yeah, in the settings.
So
that's how you
if you want me to go and give a step by step, I'll have to follow up so that everyone has those instructions. But it's very simple.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Thank you.
And then I think.
So we've been talking about this along the way, but we just also wanted you to think about some best practices for choosing collaborative technology, because the reality is there are so many platforms that we could have talked about. And even among the ones we talked about, there are still so many more that do very similar things. Like, along with Trello, we tried something called Taskmeister, which is almost the same exact platform. So with, obviously there are some variations, they have to, but there's so many platforms out there that do different things. And so there's really like no like 100% great answer that does everything, but there are lots of really good technologies out there. So you want to make sure that you're considering things like cost, screen sharing capabilities, audio options, privacy policies, and the number of users. So we tried to cover a bunch of those things as we talked about each platform, but also a lot of them are free to at least try. So try it out, see what you like, see what you don't like, see what works best for your team. The great things about this is you don't have a lot to lose. We've tried out several platforms that we tried them and they were great, or they didn't work and we don't use them anymore within our office, or even among friends, so things are constantly changing, but I say, give it a try, see what fits best for your personality, the way you work, the things you like, and don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to piggyback with what you said. You have nothing to lose with trying, and you won't really know what's going to work for you until you dive in, because just because it worked for me or it worked for Heather, it doesn't mean that it's going to be right for your situation or right for your organization or right for the audience that you're trying to communicate with. So really just understanding what your goals are is going to help you make a really good decision on what technology you're going to use. But at the end of the day, do utilize those tools, because like I said earlier in the very beginning of our presentation, you could be wasting time drafting emails, sitting in meetings that could have been completely avoided. Really just making life easier and making your team and organization more effective utilizing these technologies.
And I really like what Tanisha was talking about a little bit earlier in the presentation, this idea of backward design, this knowing what your goal is, knowing what you're trying to accomplish, and then backing up from there, I think is really key in choosing technologies as well. Like knowing what it is you're trying to accomplish, where you're trying to go, can really help you in choosing what the right technology is and what the right platform is.
Well, with that,
Yeah.
we are going to be open to taking any questions that you may have or just continuing the discussion. But here's our contact information. We'd love to hear from you, how you enjoyed the presentation, or if there's just more information you'd like to know from our experiences. We're definitely happy to be a resource there.
Does anyone have any questions out in the audience? Because I was trying to think about like what would be a good platform for us as grad students to maybe start using, or is there one that we could all kind of be like, hey, let's all start trying to use Trello when we work together as grad students, and that can be something we work on as students together, or just trying to think of like how we could really utilize those projects as well, and maybe see if there's a way we could streamline them so that we have all of us grad students at UD and HCFS are working through this system. I don't know if anyone has thoughts or wants to talk in the chat about something that might be useful like that as well.
One of the questions was very much aligned with that.
Okay.
She said, since we don't have a physical grad student lounge, is there a platform that could act as a virtual grad student lounge where we could schedule meetings, post on a discussion board, start doing some of that work that Kathy was talking about, chat with them? Is there one that's better than another, or?
I would say that's probably where like Slack could come in. You could, because you're doing the messaging and you can leave different kinds of feedback. I think if you could have a channel for students and invite students in, or students could request access, and then you could have different threads on maybe your research or different meeting times or different things like that. So I think that's a place where you could use Slack. We didn't talk about this really, but I know another thing that you could consider would be, what does your university offer? So like I know here we have Canvas, and I know that students in my program have their own campus site. Well, I think it's linked to part of one of our courses, but it's up there all the time, and we can leave messages for each other. We have discussion boards within Canvas. So I know that's a whole different ballgame, but I do think Slack would probably be the best place for that.
And I generally think that everything that we covered could be utilized in one of those situations. So if you chose to use a Slack, or if you chose to use Asana, or if you, even at the bare minimum, using everything that Google has to offer, there's still an element of collaboration that can be utilized and kind of extracted from all of those platforms. It's just deciding, as a group, which one do we want to try? And that could vary from, year to year, semester to semester, project to project. So it's really kind of up to those people who are making those decisions to really decide.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else? Any other questions or anything? Do you mind too if we are able to share your presentation? Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And I guess we will just reconvene in a little bit.
Yes,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.